With teaching you the idea that there could be a word that's reminding you of something that acts as an anchor. Just like a ring could be an anchor for a relationship, or a picture on the wall could be a reminder, an anchor of some physiological state. The sound of someone's voice could be an anchor for feeling relaxed. The idea of choosing a word that could be symbolic of something you're wanting to trust in yourself, and then actually hearing this word that you are trusting whilst you're in the act of trusting. So it's bringing these things together, actually. So there's many other things there too. However, that's part of the structure. If I shared with you a little bit of the structure of Jamaquacs, it's the idea of taking away your external vision to see each of you to what degree you are able to rely on your other senses, your internal vision, auditory, because auditory was very important in the way of getting out of that. Whether or not people were kind of locked more into the kinesthetic self, because when you were giving them a little jam from behind, were they, feeling that and realising, the crack's not there, so you kind of move on, or was somebody kind of persisting, trying to get through in that spot. So the games themselves that we're going to be playing enable us to be able to discover our process, actually. And those people having difficulty playing in life out there, generally this is as a result of authority messages, dad or mum or somebody told us not to be playing, that we should be doing something that's productive. Sometimes anti-parent, anti-perfect parent shaping, where the parent wants you to be really perfect, right? And they ask you to cut the lawn or do something, and then you leave a little bit kind of around the tree or something, and maybe sometimes the kid's actually doing it on purpose, because it's kind of an anti-perfect kind of parent shaping that is happening. And so religious ideology sometimes also will inhibit somebody from being playful. And anyway, the main thing is that the games were eliciting your playfulness and the resourcefulness and the idea of us doing things together. Each of the things that we'll do out here actually have a structure, and so it'll be a good idea to, when you are wanting to know what the structure of something is, to ask, because that's what this practitioner's training is about. It's about the use of some analogue to affect behaviour change, involving the person in some activity to bring them through something that has elements that are isomorphic for something the person's going through in life. All of this information will be first-hand to you, at the end of these 14 days. Everybody has... Bruce?
About the knot. The group that did not get the knot solved. I just sensed that we weren't going to solve it. Suppose if I'd have said we are going to solve it, we are going to solve it, we are going to solve it, and then it didn't happen. Is that a negative?
Yes, you see, because now when someone doesn't get something, is that okay? Because that's the structure of this, isn't it? If I go for something and I kind of just miss out on being able to get what it is that okay in life for that to occur? And to what degree do I have the ability to accept that? So let's say somebody goes for the pamper pole and they're successful. To me, they jump off the pamper pole and they're trusting that apparatus up there, and trusting that person to catch them on the ground. They might miss the trapeze, and then when they're getting to the ground now, to what degree was what they did taken in? And actually, what a wonderful idea this is sometimes, to set things up just to see how it is with people, whether it is okay that something wasn't worked through completely. I think that the idea of the structure of the knots is looking to see who it is in the group really who is kind of scouting out the situation, because this knot, when you are really close to the shackles of those links that you are close to, sometimes we don't see the rust. But then when you are standing back, it's possible sometimes that you really can see the rust that's there. And And then the idea to be your cooperation with each other in your ability to solve this. Sometimes I say to do this without language, so that the people are just actually seeing and working it out that way. I would say, Bruce said, we are not going to work this out, but work this out was the whole thing. Even though not was there, work out was there. So this whole thing was to do with it working out, if there was a way for that. I would say if you hear yourself saying something, that there's a way to frame it positively, I think will enhance the process, because Bruce really did take a role in the group actually of scout, where he was standing back looking at the overall pattern. Okay, so everybody has a pen. Take down these pages from the Technician's Manual, pages 94 to 107. Pages 94 to 107. That's that review of that tape. There's quite a few things in that, and it'll be easy reading to skim through it. I'll just share something with you about this. This telecommunications company was doing a promotion video for their firm, and what they did was they filmed a disaster that occurred, and then they said, look how quick we were to act in this disaster. And basically the film was about everything was just just ripped up, and homes were disrupted and everything, and the whole thing was about these people and how hard they worked during this period of time, right? And this is something which is not regular. They were asking their employees to take on some values which were to do with working hard, and they were using a situation which was not about something which was to do with the innovativeness of their ongoing ability to make decisions, but something that was a calamity. And what I say about this is kind of incongruent. What you're asking people is to be involved in excellence with something which is ongoing, and the example that you elicited in the promotional tape was one that was involving disaster, and people working long hours into the night to sort things out. And the main thing was that the executives that were running the company, their president really had a very strong work ethic, intensely. Life sucks and then you die and all this sort of stuff, that life's meant to be hard. So actually the promotional training tape really shows this. But anyway, it'll be good information as you read through this on the meta programs, ways of sorting information. Okay, so also from the Technician's Manual, pages 1 to 5 of the Technician's Manual is talking a little bit about whole brain functioning and what this training is about.
Is that 1 or 5?
1 to 5.
Oh.
Yeah. 5 to 17, which is about the language of peace and the ionophoric theory, which we went over today, so you'll familiarise yourself with that. And then section 2 of the Technician's Manual, pages 12 and pages 13. Section 2, pages 12 and pages 13 of the Technician's Manual is all of the distinctions which are whole brain functioning distinctions. So you'll familiarise yourself with those 2 pages, because tomorrow morning we're going to go over those distinctions so that you are understanding what is specific about this training that is different from some other training. What is it that we're learning here in whole brain functioning, which is including neurolinguistic programming and other things which are the distinctions which make us. Okay, so now in the Practitioner's Manual you'll want to read Roman numerals 1 to Roman numerals 7. And there's some things about excellence there. And I'll just give you a small blast of this, and then we'll do a tiny little chant, and then we'll wrap everything up. So this little chant that I'm going to teach you is one that we're going to use right throughout the training. And this chant is a chant that was chanted to call spirit. Basically, it was to put life into everybody in some moment. And so that they would use this chant really to bring life and bring spirit here. And so what I'd like you to do is to think that you are really egging your neighbour on, so that they can hear your voice, so that you can hear their voice and really do this chant. Now some of you know this chant. Okay, so it goes something like this. And there's two of this, and then all of a sudden there's this really high piece in there. And we'll do the whole thing 3 times. We'll go through the whole thing 3 times. By the third time through, everybody really should have this chant. Okay? And it goes something like this. Oh, way I 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 Is when you have the ability to freely associate, to go from one thing to the next. So if I was to ask you to make a sound, you could easily make a sound. I've got a friend in New York, if they were in a group and I asked them to make a sound, they would kind of be, they could hardly get any sound out, you see. So now this is a standard of excellence, your ability to be able to really use your voice. All right, we're going to be starting, there's going to be muffins and coffee at 9:30 in the morning. So those of you who are interested in coming for muffins and coffee, they'll be there at 9:30, and we're going to be starting at 10 o'clock. So have a really great night. Each of you, you are great beings. Thank you. The session with this turtle flute. Some of you here have heard this turtle flute. And I think in a way this turtle flute really has taught me something quite incredible about sound. This was probably one of the very first instruments that I really just picked up and played just masterfully. I was at a camp some 5 years ago, and it was a camp for a whole heap of musicians had come in, and we were just about to organise a concert in Macon Bowl in Vancouver. And here this turtle flute was laying on a blanket, and I walked over to there was quite a few instruments on the blanket. I walked over and I picked up this turtle flute and I played it just like you'll hear it this morning. And everybody was amazed, and the person who whose turtle flute it was, came over and put it in my hand and just said that no one had ever played this flute like this before, and they thought that it absolutely was mine. And so I played this flute in Make and Bowl, and there was this Hopi elder, Carolyn her name was, and she had a whole entourage of people with her. And she'd been invited there to address the people that had gathered. And so I played the flute, and then I kind of was back in the wings on the stage, and Carolyn came out with her entourage, and then she came out, and she was just a small woman, maybe 4.5 feet or something, Hopi elder. And she came up to the microphone, and she stood in front of the microphone, and then there was silence. And I sort of was looking at her, and I looked out into the audience, and I could kind of see that people were a little restless and kind of moving around just a little bit like this, and sometime passing Carolyn hadn't said anything. And so then somebody beside me said, "Oh, she might not say anything at all, And so we're just standing there, and I looked at Carolyn, and I could see that she was perfectly integrated where she was. She hadn't come there with anything in her mind to say. And this was how her people would be. This is how her people are. She hadn't come there with anything contrived to say. And that if something would come to her, then she would say it. And she was perfectly integrated where she was. And while some time passed, maybe 4 minutes or more, and during this time, I'm sure everybody, every single person there that was looking up at Carolyn thought of the plight of her people. And eventually she did say a few words. And I think that what the most amazing thing to me was that there was a sense of comfort during that 4 minutes. Because Carolyn was vibrating an energy. She was emitting an energy. She was living an energy that was integrated. And it was perfectly all right for her to be there and take that time without saying anything at all. And what a wonderful thing it is to be able to take that moment whenever you are in need of that moment, and to be fully integrated whilst you take that moment, and for that moment to be all right. So this only has 2 notes, but depending on the frequency of the note, you can create a sound of a higher note, depending on the frequency of the note. So it only has 2, but it'll sound like it's got quite a few. So I like to start with this story about the evolution of our consciousness. And the story starts going back about 7,000 years to the evidence that we have from archaeology of how people were living. And people were living in pockets of about 100, no more than 100. This was about the largest. And this region that I'm talking about is east of the Mediterranean: Sudan, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon. And west of this area there used to be land. There used to be quite a bit of land between Crete and Turkey. And within this region there was some land that's beneath the sea. And it caused a huge wall of water to come sweeping across the land through this region. Quite a great calamity, in fact. And sent people scurrying into each other. Quite a bit was destroyed and sent people scurrying into each other. Before this time, everyone had their own way of making decisions. And what our village had decided was our gods in the way that we would make decisions. And of course, it was very interesting for them because the only way that they could describe how somebody who was deceased, their voice could be, they could hear this person's voice in their head, was that this person was a god and that the gods were speaking. And so they would sometimes hallucinate what it was that they needed to know. So there was many handheld idols with big eyes like this, and they would hold the handheld idol out like this, and then they would go into like a trance somewhat and to know what it was that they needed to do. And also, in those days they could just throw some sticks up in the air, and then depending on the way they landed, everybody would gather around and somebody would read the sticks. And of course this was acting like a trigger, enabling the person to be able to key into their unconscious mind to know something of the significance of something they needed to do. Or they would just look up at the clouds. Depending on the shape of something, they would know the significance of something to come, and that this was acting like a trigger. And before this time, of course, all during this time, the way that we learned information was through story, and it's much more difficult to turn your hearing off. And so people were scurrying into each other, and all of a sudden we have evidence of forms of the disruption to the ease that people had felt before this time, that there started to become inability to make decisions. And so we find evidence of forms of disruption to the ease that hadn't existed before. And it wasn't very long before a pharaoh in Egypt started to count things that were being traded. And it wasn't very long after that the first laws were written on a post. And for the first time in our consciousness, these laws were written, and I could decide not to look at that if I didn't want to. And the concept of I started to form. Before this time, our consciousness was much more stimulus signal bound. There was not so much of a sense of a separateness as there is, or autonomy as there is today. People were sensing that they're much more being joined and being maybe even somewhat controlled. And it was much more this hemisphere that was driving the person's behaviour. And so it's very difficult to turn your hearing off. And the minute that the laws were written, I could decide whether I wanted to look at those or not, and the concept of I started to form. And some thousands of years of evolution, to go back 2,000 years, when most everyone had this idea inside that it's possible for God to be in each person, inside each person. And I would say the wisdom of the ancient, if the Middle Eastern people went further east into the Himalayas, people there were understanding that God could be in each person, and that prophets walking around in the East 2,000 years ago were all preaching this to people, that God could be in each person. And of course this was quite a blasphemous thing to say, wasn't it? Because the emperor at the time had control over the people somewhat by having them pay allegiance to the emperor, who was supposed to be God's right-hand person, or representative. And so they considered it blasphemous to be teaching the people that God could be in each person, because God was in the emperor. Even though it seemed a little strange that things could be that way, most people kind of had a sense that it's possible for God to be in each person. And in the East, there's the tradition of actually honouring the God energy in each person, as they would bow and honour the God energy in each person. And our ritual of praying in the Judeo-Christian ethic would have us most often be praying outside ourselves. The way that the congregation is set up in a way where rows of people are kind of all facing one way. And I would say if Jesus was alive today, that he would want us to be focused on what he lived for, rather than some of the Judeo-Christian ethics of sensing that he died for us, but that he lived for us. And I remember the very first time that I ever saw a crucifix, and I sensed the reverence of this symbol, this holy symbol, and I think out of consciousness has led us to a place of worshipping sacrifice. That it's been all right for us to send our brothers somewhere else to sacrifice their life for us. And I think today that there isn't any other higher ideal, I think, than the preciousness of human life, of life. So I think that there is an expansion of consciousness that's occurring in this era. And yesterday we talked about this, the language of peace, how it would be that we have the ability to use a language of peace, and that there's no such thing as negation in your primary experience. So if I say to you to visualize this in your head now, that the dog is not chasing the cat. If I had you visualize this in your head, what is it that you see? Okay.
I see dogs sitting there and cats sitting there.
Okay, so how do you visualize the dog? The dog is not chasing the cat.
Dog sitting.
Then where's chasing come in?
It doesn't, because you said not to.
Then what not to do.
You told me.
Yes. I told you what?
You told me, Jason.
Yes, and that means something, doesn't it? So what if I said to you, I'm not really feeling upset. I'm not really feeling angry. I'm not doing that. Or you know, we're about to do something and someone puts their hand up and goes, I'm not feeling scared. You know, most people, if you do this and you have a visual image of the dog not chasing the cat, most people will see the dog chasing the cat, but the dog will be frozen. Kind of. That's if we took a person right to that place, generally the dog is kind of chasing the cat, but the whole picture is kind of frozen, more or less. If I said to you, don't see a pink elephant with blue polka dots. Pink is a colour, blue is a colour, elephant means something. There's no such thing as not seeing that. I'll give you another example, Tanya. Some parents are doing this to their children. They're coming to their children and they're saying to their children, don't you kids now run across the road. You hear? Or thou shalt not kill. That's all about killing. Or thou shalt not steal. That's all about stealing. There's no such thing as negation in our primary experience. Negation does occur in mathematics, and negation does occur in our language, but negation does not occur in our primary experience.
Is it that if you say to me, thou shalt not kill, to understand what kill means, I represent it to myself so fast that I may not even notice that I've represented it, that I've made a picture internally of the dog chasing the cat. It happens so fast that I may not even be conscious, but I had to do it just to know what he's talking about.
Because we're so used to language.
You cause a visualize before you think it.
So fast that it may not even be conscious.
You don't visualize that before you can think it. And if you say it that way, if you phrase it that way.
Is it about this?
That's something that's happening to our experience possibly. However, the main thing is that there's no such thing as negation.
If you say the dog was not chasing the cat,
Right.
chasing me, then for me to actually understand what you're saying, don't I have to more or less visualize first the action chasing before I can say, before I can see not chasing?
Not necessarily.
And not the negation of the activity or the action?
Not necessarily, because as John was saying, it's possible that the person may not be in a visual system at all. The main thing is that the words that you heard, all have a meaning, and there's no such thing as negation.
But it never happens to children who say, don't run across the road, and the kids here run across the road, and they see the activity, what do they say?
The kids the parent has put run across the road in the kid's brain, or don't touch that now, it's hot. Now, and a young child will straight away reach out and touch that because of the language. Because the language in the brain is setting up an action for the child. Dee has first-hand experience of this. We talked about this, and then we went out and we did an activity, and Dee had Carlita with her, and was holding Carlita, and anyway, the game was that this wire was electric, and that anybody who would touch that would be fried. Right? And Carlita, her hand came out and touched the wire.
I said, don't touch this immediately. That's what she did.
What's the experience if you say something like, don't watch the dog chasing the cat? Whereas in my mind it immediately changed to, the dog's not chasing the cat's running away from the dog. So the action was, you set the action just like when you say, don't imagine a pink elephant with blue polka dots. I have to imagine it first in order to blank it out, and it immediately came to mind.
Yes. The main thing is that there's no such thing as negation in our primary experience. So give us an example, Ned, of a physician treating somebody that would use a language of negation and then have the person end up with some condition, in fact. Can you give us an example?
Well, I think when you're working with someone and you say, well, does this hurt?
That's a good one. That's a good one. Here's the child just about to get an injection, right, or something like that, and the doctor says, okay, so this is not going to hurt. The doctor would be better off saying, you'll feel just a slight sensation.
Yeah.
And there will probably be a little bit of a coolness you'll feel, and just a slight sensation, and then be talking about, what did you do, yesterday, and use it to track a distraction technique away from this, actually, and the mind has the ability to do this. And the physician who would say, this is not going to hurt, the child's absolutely going to access, what does hurt mean something, actually?
Not only that, the child figures the person's an idiot.
Yes.
It's not going to hurt, and then you hurt him.
Yes.
You're really stupid. Right. But if you ask them, what I do is I say, you ever had something feel really funny? Remember when you hit your crazy bone or something? And they go, yeah. I go, this is going to feel funny. And so it takes it out of the realm of this is pure pain to it's just an unusual sensation.
And that's honest too, being right there that this is a feeling you will.
Right. You acknowledge the hurt. You don't say.
All right. Let's each of us now. Let's give us an example. Who would like to give us an example of negation? Especially in your business, please, if there's a way.
When we had our first child, Sarah wanted to do natural childbirth, the Lamaze method, and we had a particularly ineffective, I think, trainer, because she kept saying, this is not going to be painful. This is not going to be painful. This is not going to be painful. So Sarah did not, this being her first child, did not have the experience of childbirth and took that all in. This is not going to be painful. And when the pain began to happen, she lost confidence because her primary teacher was saying this is not going to be painful. And she lost it.
Yes.
She lost
okay,
it.
So the main thing is there, what's your wife's name, Sarah? Sarah was hearing the Lamaze teacher saying, going to be painful. And what a wonderful thing it is to wonder whether you can have an easy delivery. I wonder how you feel about having an easy delivery is an excellent way to ask a question and make a statement about having an easy delivery. And that the possibility of even having orgasm. That most of you have heard of birth orgasm, have you? That's quite a common occurrence, actually. In those subcultures where people are closer to the earth, there isn't such a thing as this idea of birth being anything than an easy, ecstatic process. And in some subcultures, the women, in the way they would speak about something, are creating a physiology around them for the ease with which they could, deliver.
This isn't about negation, but I thought it was really cute when Virginia and Deanne were delivering a child. A friend of ours was having a baby. It was kind of a cloudy day, and there were some thoughts about maybe a complication with the birth or something. So Virginia kept going over the window, and she'd look outside and she'd say, oh, the day's just opening up. It's just starting to open up. She's like, oh, and look, the sun's poking its head through.
Jenny's very good. She's great. Yeah. She is wonderful in her ability to use her language like this. She is really a medicine woman.
So for our second child, we got a different instructor who talked about very strong rhythms. And Jessica just came out with
Yes. Okay.
It's a beautiful delivery, yeah.
It did for
That's great.
Okay, so let's another example. Who's got another example of something that's...
I'm curious, this maybe doesn't involve direct negation, but I think it's negation, like when I'm working with the body and somebody will say, oh, my shoulder blades, they're really tight, aren't they? And they almost want that confirmation that their shoulders are really tight. And
So what would you do?
I know. Then I'd say, well, they can stand to loosen up a little bit.
Excellent.
But, immediately it's almost like something people almost want to hear. I mean, unconsciously, of course, but they want to hear that. But is that negation, even though you're not using not, but it's still...
Okay, so actually that's wonderful what you said to the person, because you use the language of peace to pace the person's experience as being valid. That's the first thing that you are always doing. You are making sure that you are validating what this other person's experience is to develop rapport with them. And the way that Christiane did that was to say that, oh, it looks like your shoulder could loosen up a little bit, and actually use the language that's to do with it, the whole process. That's excellent. Okay, somebody else.
When I'm programming a client, like when I'm designing a house, I want their focus to be on the possibilities and the things that they want in the house. And as we were talking, I was thinking of a negation that I use. I would say, don't focus on the cost at this stage of the game.
So focus on the cost. If I were there, I'd be sort of really going. That's a good one. Richard's an architect, and so this language really will help. So what would you say if you were thinking to yourself, I think it would be a good idea to be focused on something else, maybe?
Yeah, I would say
To focus on
at this stage of the game, what's appropriate is to focus on all the things that you want in the house.
Yes, and then what?
And then
If it is to do with...
we'll balance that with the cost
Yeah, excellent.
at a later time.
Okay.
I quit saying cost, I say investment.
Yeah.
Excellent. That's excellent, Dave. That's really good language. Did everybody hear that?
It is about investment, it's not like a cost.
That's wonderful.
Yeah,
Johnny, did you hear that?
Oh, I've learned this one.
Good. Excellent, David.
I walked into the plant manager's office the other day and I heard him on the phone and he was calling somebody to find out if he could do some work. And the guy answered the phone and said, you don't do such and such, do you? And the guy said, no, I don't. Why did you call this guy? He said, well, I wanted to find out if he could do something. I said, well, you told him he couldn't do it. That happens all the time.
Okay, so now sometimes, there's an allowance for the plant manager possibly to say something in this way, because it's possible that he knows the person at the other end is a polarizer. And if the person is a polarizer, the way to develop rapport with someone who sorts information by polarizing is to say that, oh, you wouldn't feel like going out and taking a walk right now, would you? Because if the person said, well, would you like to take a walk right now, and the person's a polarizer, the person's going to say, nah. So actually this is a good one for your children. But anyway, the main thing is that you are able to hopefully create an environment on the outside that enables you really to live inside something that's comfortable yourself. Okay? So I really am grooming the people on the outside of me, and that's like stalking, because I know when I arrive somewhere that everything is taken care of, and that people around me are using wonderful language, and they're focused on what is working, and they're focused on what they want, and they're focused on what is resourceful. What a wonderful place, what a wonderful world it is.